for the introduction. In this brief time that I have, I will just give a quick overview of what is in my chapter and relate this to the situation in Pakistan, which Malia has in fact described. Yes, the state of the energy sector is a primary impediment to Pakistan's economic growth. And yes, the sector is in a dire state. And perhaps the most starkly visible effects of this are the 12 to 18-hour brownouts and blackouts. Now that, by the way, is only the visible part of the iceberg. A lot lies below. Now when I was doing background research for putting this paper together and now engaging in Pakistan's energy sector after a break, there are four underlying considerations which came to my mind, and I want to share these with you. First is that it is evident that Pakistan's policymakers have done an excellent job in articulating the objectives of the energy sector. You can't change those words, they're almost perfect. And yet, the sector is in the state it is. So the conclusion I draw from that is, it's not that the policymakers don't know what they're aiming for, but they don't know how to do it. And that's what we need to focus on. The second, that whichever way I approached this sector, there was a universal agreement amongst analysts that policy coordination and the lack of policy planning was a major impediment in this sector. And the fragmentation of the institutions was very apparent. And we just wonder whether those many institutions which are involved in the decision making actually talk to each other. And third, in a time of crisis, it's very tempting for us practitioners who've been in the business for so long to give prescriptive solutions. That's not what I want to do. I think far more important for Pakistan, and indeed for any country, is to build the capacity within the country so that the Pakistanis can make their own informed decisions by themselves. And that's in the spirit in which Maria had put this book together. So therefore, capacity building becomes extremely important. That's at three levels: at the individual level, at the level of the institution, and at the level of the policymakers. Fourth, it is also abundantly clear that the prevailing conditions can be attributed to lost opportunities, to prohibitive delays, to implementation performance, to reform reversals, and a persistent neglect of the poor. And I want to underline the last part, because that in many ways explains the predicament that Pakistan finds itself in. And this is the story of Pakistan's energy sector. And in this respect, the energy sector is symptomatic virtually of all the sectors of the economy. Now, the paper itself focuses on four sets of issues. It's not an issues and options paper. I didn't want that to happen, but I just wanted to bring out the issues to show that if you can introduce or reintroduce integrated energy planning and policy formulation, which in fact was something which Pakistan had done very well in the 1980s, we go a long way towards solving these problems that we see. Now, this integrated energy planning, or IEP as I call it for short, is a mechanism which integrates the energy subsector plans and policies with the national objectives, and arrives at a set of policies which can be tested for their impact on the economy. As such, it is a 5-stage process, starting with the national plans, assessing the demand for energy, identifying the supply options, building what we call the energy balances, and finally coming up with a set of policy options which, as I said, can be tested. The heart of the process is this energy balance. It's a very sophisticated technique, and here I want to give the good news. The Hydrocarbon Institute of Pakistan, in fact, produces these energy balances in what is called the Energy Yearbook. And I urge you all to read this book whenever it comes out every year. Excellent analysis. And that gives hope for the future. And I think should actually stop those who believe that Pakistan does not have islands of excellence. They are there. They need to be identified. They need to be used more effectively. But at the heart of the integrated energy planning process is also a requirement that a separate ministry eventually has to be established. The bureaucracy has to be reduced. And this Central Ministry of Energy, let's call it that, would have the overarching responsibility for the whole sector and access is important to the top policy level. Now the 4 issues. The first set of issues actually stem from the yearbook itself. Despite the excellent analysis, there is one glaring omission. This yearbook focuses on the commercial sector, that is energy supplied to those customers who are on the grids and are billed for the services. It neglects, by and large, the non-commercial sector, that's fuel wood, agricultural residues, biomass, biogas, and so forth. And the most egregious issue connected with this lapse is the fact that more than half the country relies on that source of energy, the non-commercial energy. So we're really neglecting more than half the country. And moreover, half the energy mix, in fact, is from the non-commercial sources. By including this into the integrated energy planning matrix, if you like, policy makers will be forced to consider dramatic shifts in emphasis, and it will immediately put the sector on a long-term and short-term track to success. Now, to some extent, this neglect is understandable. The country often finds itself in a position that it has to jumpstart the economy, and the temptation is go for the commercial sectors, and of course there is a policy response. You get the growth. But by that very approach, you are neglecting the poor of the country. And eventually, over what I call the medium to long term, that neglected part of the population in fact stymies growth and eventually drags it down again. And this cycle has been repeated again and again in Pakistan. And it is the story of Pakistan in a way. Short-term crisis response rather than a coordinated longer-term vision in which even the short-term actions are taken within that long-term vision. Now, IEP can clearly prevent this, there's no doubt in my mind. And really, these kinds of short-term policies, we begin to neglect the ecosystem, we neglect the effects of our policies on the incidence of poverty in the country. And I'd like to put this into a very serious note. Maria mentioned the floods of last year, and we must ask ourselves the question, to what extent did the damage caused in the floods, how much of this was attributable to an act of God, and how much did the hand of man play in it? And this is a very serious question, and I think has to be answered for posterity. For the second set of issues, I constructed a model in which I looked at 3 things together. One, a substantial resource potential, we can discuss how large that actually is. A very prohibitive and expanding deficit over the coming 20 years. And the fact I mentioned earlier that there's 50% of the country, or more than 50%, relies on non-commercial energy. Now this puts policymakers in a kind of panic. They tend to then welcome all forms of energy and say, go ahead, go ahead, go ahead. Now, obviously, you can't do that. You don't have the funds. I mentioned the shortage of our fiscal discipline, actually. And this common trap has led to a lot of shortcomings in our energy policy. The integrated approach, again, arrives at an appropriate balance in which you can bring in those things which give you the better returns in the short, medium, and long term.